Good afternoon. The year 2026 did not arrive with a roar. It arrived with restraint. No single event marked its opening. No sudden collapse, no sweeping breakthrough. Instead, the year began the way many consequential years do. Quietly, with tension beneath the surface and history gathering momentum in places most people do not see. On January 1st, the war in Ukraine entered another winter. It had not widened into global conflict. It had not resolved into peace. It endured. Western support continued under the umbrella of NATO defense. Ministers spoke of deterrence. Diplomats spoke of endurance. The front lines moved inches, not miles. Across Europe, energy supplies remained stable. Defense budgets rose steadily. Political rhetoric hardened in some capitals. But the alliance structure held. The questions were no longer about immediate collapse, they were about long-term sustainability. The United States entered the year navigating domestic political strain while maintaining roughly 100,000 troops across Europe. Washington projected steadiness through European leaders watched closely for any shift in tone. American economic data showed resilience, strong employment, moderating inflation, yet consumer confidence fluctuated. In China, leaders continued careful economic recalibration. Global targets were realistic, not ambitious. Property markets stabilized without booming. Beijing avoided dramatic stimulus and signaled patience. Strategic competition with the West persisted, structured, deliberate, ongoing. Global markets reflected this equilibrium. Technology and artificial intelligence drove capital flows. Semiconductor firms surged. AI infrastructure expanded. Bitcoin oscillated dramatically. Commodity prices stabilizes. Bond yields fluctuated, but did not spiral. It was not a world at ease, but it was not a world unraveling. And in this atmosphere stood Canada, entering its full calendar year under Prime Minister Mark Carney. Carney is not a conventional political figure. His authority has shaped in financial crisis, not in campaign rallies. At the Bank of Canada and later the Bank of England, he built a reputation for steadiness under pressure. He understands liquidity. He understands contagion. He understands what happens when confidence disappears. In January 2026, the background defined his tone. He did not promise rapid expansion. He did not offer sweeping tax cuts. He did not pivot dramatically on policy. Instead, he emphasized fiscal discipline, housing supply reform, infrastructure coordination, and maintaining Canada's credit strength in restless global market. Inflation in Canada had moderated compared to earlier peaks, but grocery bills still told a different story to families. Mortgage renewals loomed over households who had locked in lower rates over years ago. Employment remained steady, though growth was measured rather than explosive. Carney's message was simple and controversial. Stability first, sustainability second, expansion only when conditions allow. No issue pressed more urgently than housing. Across Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, and smaller cities, affordability remained strained. Supply had increased, but not enough. Rents remained elevated. Construction permits moved through municipal systems slowly. Provincial and federal coordination became a daily policy focus. Opposition voices sharpened their critique. Too slow, too cautious, too technical. They argued that Canadians needed visible relief, not macroeconomic reassurance. They questioned whether a leader fluent in bond markets could connect to kitchen tables. Carney responded not with that emotional rhetoric, but with structural proposals. Zoning acceleration incentives for rapid construction, infrastructure funding tied to housing density. His critics sought urgency. He offered architecture. In mid-February, global leaders gathered at the Munich Security Conference. The tone was sober. European leaders expressed quiet anxiety about long-term American posture. Defense spending commitments increased. Strategic competition dominated private conversations. Carney's remarks were measured. Canada would remain committed to NATO. Canada would not retreat from its alliances. Canada would not indulge in dramatic shifts for domestic applause. It was not a speech that trended, it was a speech that reassured. What defined these first 7 weeks was not crisis but reorganization. Global supply chains continued subtle shifts, defense budgets quietly climbed, artificial intelligence reshaped investment flows, democracies debated productivity, immigration, and energy security. It's not 2008, it's not 2020. It's something slower, structural, incremental. A world redistributing power without open conflict. 17 days into February, Canada stands in balance. Not booming, not faltering, balanced. The real tests lie ahead. Will inflation continue to ease? Will housing supply accelerate meaningfully? Will geopolitical tension intensify? Will voters reward steadiness or demand urgency? Mark Carney's strength is discipline. His vulnerability is perception. If global stability holds and growth strengthens, his measured tone will appear wise. If stagnation lingers or shocks emerge, critics will call it hesitation. The opening chapter of 2026 has not delivered spectacle. It has delivered positioning. Alliances remain intact, markets remain cautious, technology advances, governments govern under pressure. History does not always announce itself in headlines. Sometimes it gathers quietly in bond markets, in defense meetings, in trade negotiations, in zoning permits, and household budgets. And then at a moment no one fully predicts, it accelerates. For now, the world is steady but watchful, and Canada stands within that steadiness, disciplined, deliberate, aware that balance is not weakness but preparation. The year is young. The turning points, if they come, are still ahead.